Okay, so welcome back to the Girl Boss Method podcast. So tonight we are going to be going through just a little slideshow to begin with. I'm going to be talking about some tracking methods as well. So just bear with me because I'm going to share my screen with you ladies as well. And I think once we've done that, this might be a little bit more of a sorry, this might be a little bit more of an interactive and maybe even longer episode today. So just wanted to check that you ladies can see my screen. So I will be just dragging across my presentation in a moment. Somebody wants to just give me a yes or a thumbs up. That would be fab.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tulsi. Okay, perfect. Okay, so just waiting for that to load right now. So bear with me. So we're going to be doing this Myfitnesspal tracking just together as a group, and maybe even just like exploring different topics or different themes for each month. I want to do one of these once a month. I think I just said once a week, once a month, ideally. And this is just, again, we can explore different like scenarios. So maybe we can even explore like some restaurants, for example, maybe even cuisines based on like dietary lifestyle, that sort of thing. I feel like would be really helpful. And just because of recent, for sure, there's definitely been a growth in my Indian heritage or South Asian ladies. So I thought this would be a really good one to start with today. So we'll be going through some more sort of traditional Indian and South Asian, like more vegetarian style meals to begin with. And one of the things that I noticed, certainly at the beginning, with definitely with having conversation with some of you ladies, is that although my heritage is Punjabi, like that's like the language that my parents and my family speak, there is terminology with some of the foods that I think when I was speaking to some of you ladies that some of the words are different and the meals are effectively the same meals, but they're just dressed up differently with different names or so to speak. So I just thought that was really interesting. And I thought, what a great opportunity for me to go and do some research myself and see how we can work together on this as well. All right. So ideally, the reason why I want us to do these monthly, more food focused, maybe even like Myfitnesspal focused sessions is because I feel like they are going to help you massively. Myfitnesspal is probably, and tracking calories and tracking macros is probably one of the most effective ways of changing body physique basically and changing aesthetics, dropping body fat, getting toned, all of those things, dropping the weight as well. There are many ways to do these things, but I find that the tracking method allows us to see a little bit more of the data. I really want us to be data driven here, and I think it's really important for us to kind of have that sort of transparency in terms of knowing, well, I need to increase protein, well, but how much? And actually, one of the biggest things for me is allowing you ladies to eat in the way that you prefer. So you might sort of be experienced with people, maybe you've had a coach or a friend or someone that's guided you through this, through nutrition previously, and they've told you to stick to specific food types or specific meals. Maybe they want you to only eat in the way that they eat. And I think it's vitally important for us as individuals to celebrate our individuality as well. And, we all have different heritage and culture here as well. Ale, I'm sure you don't mind me saying, Ale's got some Italian heritage as well as Swiss as well, but I know that a lot of her meals are very Italian based. So it's really nice to have her on board as well, because we can learn a little bit more about how things are done elsewhere around the world. So yeah, just sort of to start with, when we're thinking about fat loss specifically, and we hear this sort of run home of protein intake, the reason why we're doing that is, yes, protein is going to allow us to drop body fat whilst maintaining muscle. Okay. Protein is highly thermic, so protein is ideally going to help us create that repair, because when we are working out our muscles, we are creating micro damage in some ways. And for example, if we have like rehabilitation needs, or anything where we really need to preserve that lean muscle tissue, it's really important that we feed those muscles as well. Okay, so it's going to help us keep fuller for longer and ultimately support our metabolism, because we know, ladies, as we age, we can encounter scenarios with metabolism as well. Things are not quite the same as they may have been in your younger years. And we know that metabolism can also be affected by different conditions that we may be having to deal with as well. And so ideally, the target for most of us is to aim for, I love skipping forward on these before I need to, is aim for at least 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So let's say, for example, if I get my phone out, because the maths on this is not always easy for me to do, but let's just say, for example, you weigh 70 kilos and we times that by 1.6, your protein target would be around 112 grams of protein. And so for some of you, you might see me just put the 100-gram target as a guide, as an aim as well. And that's, again, if your protein target is maybe even too high or unreachable, because of the way that you have been eating, it can make it more overwhelming and difficult to deal with, to try and hit those goals as well, especially if you are vegan or vegetarian. So when it comes to sort of tracking Indian food, I'm just going to broadly say it there. That again, the common dishes that we might want to track will be our dal. For example, when we are tracking things like our dal or our lentils, we want to track as a raw weight for more accurate tracking. And the reason being is that when it comes to cooking foods, there can be a change in the water content as well of foods. And this, whether the water content increases the size of the food or it decreases, it can have an effect on, how accurate we are actually tracking. So again, we're coming on to our subgis, for example, so our vegetable curries. Ideally here, you want to be logging each ingredient. So whether that's your spinach or your potatoes, you want to separately add those in. Tulsi mentioned earlier that she has been using the recipe importer within Myfitnesspal. I think that is so good. It's so important to do that. Again, if there's meals, Alice mentioned that she's been having a lot of the same meals, and she'll enter them in and enter the portions, and again, create her own meals as a result. And then you can create almost like a bank of things that you just tap into here and there as you do track and as you go through. So again, when we're thinking about our rotis, for example, we want to be mindful of the quantity, for example, as well. I know that many of us will probably have whole wheat as our roti option. There are many other different types of rotis that you can make. So another one would be the chickpea flour, or gram flour, or garbanzo flour, depending on where you're from. All of these, again, you've just got to be mindful in terms of tracking. So again, when we are tracking things like that, your dry weight for your flour, obviously any oil that you use, any of those bits as well. I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat here got a question. Just waiting for that to load. Here we go. Okay, right, got you. So, yes. Okay, perfect. All right. With the creation, Ale, of the meals, when you are adding the separate ingredients, for example, if it's a meal that you know that you use regularly, you can save it as a meal. But again, we can do a little bit more on that on a separate training for sure. So yeah, just something to that might help you in future. So then you've got your dosa and idli. And I again with this word, I didn't know what an idli was or what that food was, but I realized that it's also a dosa as well, which I've definitely consumed before. So again, typically this can be lower in calories, and it's generally made from rice and lentils. But again, we want to make sure that we're watching. And the biggest key thing here as well, especially when it comes to Indian cuisine, is the amount of oils or ghees that you might tend to use in preparation. We all know that, for example, the oils and stuff, when you're just dashing it in and you're not truly measuring it, we have no idea. And the calories can certainly start to add up or compound as you go on. So how to track recipes, for example. So we've got a recipe feature. You can add into your ingredients, and the app will calculate the nutrition values for a typical serving. So again, let's say, for example, you find a recipe online, you can actually import this into Myfitnesspal as well. So again, that will bring that up. And then when we're thinking about things like portion control, you want to use measuring cups or weighing food. Okay, so you can get Salter scales. I find that they're the most accurate. There are many other different types of digital scales out there, but you can use that to help you with weighing your food for sure. When it comes to the cup measurements, now this is actually an American format. So American cups, if you not just a random cup or a mug from from your kitchen, but just make sure that they are actual valued measuring cups. So for example, here a cup of cooked dal might be around 230 calories with 18 grams of protein. Again, that will change based on any oil and stuff that we might potentially use. And then I thought this one would be interesting as well. I don't personally have paneer, but I know that paneer is like really popular. Again, it's a type of cottage cheese. So when you're looking in MyFitnessPal, and we could use absolutely anything when we're thinking about the right entry here. The database is the largest database that you will find for any nutritional tracking method online. I have been using MyFitnessPal as long as my eldest nephew, who is going to be 19 this December. So literally like a month and a half, he's going to be 19 years old, and that is how long I remember MyFitnessPal being around. And it's not to say that I've used it for all those years, but I remember being introduced to it way back when. But so yes, there is a huge amount of entries within the database, because we can also add our own. So you want to ensure that you actually choose the one that fits the right form. So first, you want to know whether it's raw or if it's cooked, and also the brand. So for example, if you are using store-bought paneer, then it should be easy enough to find that. And let's say, for example, when you are eating out, you can also just search for a dish like a paneer curry of some sort. But again, keep in mind that any added calories that might come from the way that they've cooked it. So the additional ingredients, the flavors that they've used, these spices and so forth, and oils, etc. And then again, if you are actually using uncooked paneer, weigh it before you cook it, because that's where you're going to get a more accurate measurement. Because after cooking, the weight may change. And again, this is mostly due to water loss. So it's always best to track for accuracy. Again, adjusting for cooking oils depending on how you're cooking. So whether you're frying or sauteing your paneer, make sure you track the oils and fats separately. So, for example, let's say you use 1 tablespoon of olive oil and you actually measure this, you're going to be looking at 120 calories just for that. So, give or take, depending on the brand and again how big your tablespoon is. So again, it's really important to use as accurate as possible. And yeah, you'll need to add that in addition to the paneer calories, etc. And then when we're thinking about recipes again, so you've got varied palak paneer or paneer tikka. You can use Myfitnesspal's recipe feature again to add all the ingredients, paneer, the oil, the spices, the vegetables, and then you'll get your total nutritional breakdown for your serving. One thing that you can do, again, I know that some of you might have, whether it's partners or people you live with or children or housemates or whatever, you might find that you're actually all eating from the same amount, or maybe you might even you made that one batch and you might split it along a couple of dinners or lunches, etc. Just ensure you know and try and just make equal measures. I know it sounds crazy, but getting out a couple of identical bowls out and literally dishing it out, and the thing is you might only need to do this the first time, but I think it's quite a good way of kind of working out how to divvy a recipe up. And then, yeah, when we're looking at, typical serving size, the 100-gram mark for most things is what we'll kind of use. And again, protein, 18 grams. And then we're looking at calories of about 260 to 300. If anyone does notice anyone else popping up in the call tonight, just last minute, can you just let me know? I don't see anyone just yet, but just in case we've got any latecomers. Okay. All right. I wanted to kind of just touch on this as well when, it comes to, some more specific health concerns that we might have, especially when we're thinking about Indian cuisine as well. So I think I have just skipped forward one. All right. So let's go back one. Okay, so we were talking about like PCOS basically, so polycystic ovary syndrome and metabolic issues. And we know that PCOS, for example, was very common in our sort of more Indian, South Asian population. And metabolic issues, again, there could be various reasons why these things might occur. Okay, so ideally, we want to focus on our protein and fiber. We want high protein and high fiber rich foods that are going to help regulate those insulin levels and improve your metabolism. And then you can kind of, again, these are guidelines, but you can stick behind sort of more low GI foods. So sort of brown rice, your quinoa, your lentils, your vegetables, which are low on the glycemic index. And the reason being is that these are going to help keep you fuller and more sustained for longer as well. Whereas typically high GI foods, they're sort of faster bursts of energy, etc. And then in terms of fats, we never want to be in a position where we are fat free. Fats are massively important for hormonal health. And I would generally, advise that as women, we're sort of sticking around that sort of 25 to 30% fats. And look, as we go on, I know that macro tracking as a whole can be really confusing and difficult to manage as well, but it takes time and it takes practice. And what I'm really hoping for is as we go through this series, we can start to really just tick off those boxes when it comes to obviously making sure that we have things centered around Myfitnesspal at least once a month. So again, for women that are trying to conceive or childbearing age, you want to, again, in terms of your folate and your B vitamins, you want to have your nutrient dense foods like your leafy greens, your lentils, fortified grains, and then in terms of omega-3s, your healthy fats, so your flax seeds and chia seeds and walnuts for hormones and health and fertility as well. And then I wanted to also touch on for anyone experiencing like early menopause, or even mothers that have sort of, young children, and perhaps maybe, you are breastfeeding as well. You, again, just to kind of focus on some of these other foods that we want. Oh, excuse me. So you want to also include calcium rich foods as well, so like your dairy options, so your paneer and your yogurt, but also for us vegans, we've got our leafy greens, and also tofu as well as calcium in. And again, when it comes to your vitamin D and your magnesium intake, vitamin D is definitely something we should all be supplementing as a whole. But I would always advise that if there's anything that you're ever concerned about, definitely reach out to your doctor and get tested. Okay. And then when it comes to like things like sleep and stress, again, magnesium is great for helping us get to sleep as well, and focus on that as well. So you can either, again, take supplements and focus on foods like spinach and almonds, for example, and then, your lean proteins as well. So yeah. And then we're thinking about timing as well of meals. This can have an effect on your sleep. So when we're thinking about sort of Indian cuisine as well, some of the meals can be quite heavy as well. And ideally, you want to try and make sure that you're having a balanced enough meal that it's keeping you sustained. And ideally, we want to kind of avoid that sort of late night snacking feature. So again, I don't want you thinking that you've got to scrimp around your meals. I always think larger, heartier meals that really kind of like, give you good energy, help you feel sustained, are always going to be best. And then this is also worth mentioning as well. Tryptophan is also, it's recognized as being very important for encouraging with sleep and relaxation. And again, we can find this in some of our paneer and yogurt options as well. And I think we might be done with the slides. I think maybe I've got one left. Okay. Yeah. We've gone back to the beginning. Typical. Lovely. There you go. We could call it that. I'm just making sure that we haven't skipped over anything. Okay, almost there. Yeah. So looking at the health concerns, and the final one was, all right. Yeah, practical tips. Okay. So yeah, so when we're thinking about practical tips for sort of busy schedules, batch cooking always helps, especially with some of that sort of high protein stuff. And we're planning out meals or tracking. Ideally, this all kind of feeds into one another, these points here, but you want to make sure that you're stocked up and you've always got your like easy to prepare, easy options for your protein. One of the things that I do, so some of you may know, I'm a vegan myself. I have tofu, and I tend to like press my tofu in advance, and I just keep that, in the fridge, and I know that it's ready. Other things, again, just stocking up and stuff. Roasted chickpeas are a great snack, if I'm honest. It's something that I've probably learned off my nieces because they love snacking on them. Bit of paprika on there, some salt, and again, you can just either air fry or roast those in the oven, which is really nice. And then, yes, when we're thinking about our batch prepping and stuff, yeah, just making sure that you are stocked up. Preparation is so important. And one of the things that I would also, again, maybe suggest is look at pre-tracking. So rather than tracking at the end, so a couple of different levels, you might track at the end of the day, okay? Prior to that, you might track as you go. So end of the day, typically, again, this might be, especially when you're starting out and you're not really sure, and you're just sort of like navigating where you are currently eating. Rather than trying to change everything at once, it might be the first level that we look at. And then we might start looking at tracking as you go, because that's going to be a little bit more idealistic, it's going to be more accurate as well. And when you really are ahead of the game or the head of the curve, you are tracking well in advance. So I think that one as well is a good one to note. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to finish off here. Ladies, please hang around because we are going to do a part 2 to this training in a mo. We'll go through and we'll do some live tracking together using Myfitnesspal. And yeah, for those of you that have just stumbled across this podcast, this has been the Girl Boss Method, and we will see you here next time.